Hello everyone, welcome to the third video by the community. Well, from this video onwards, we'll be doing hands-on coding. So if you are someone who is using a laptop or a desktop, I recommend that you visit the community page where I have provided the links from where you can download the compiler, and after that you can get started with the coding on your own laptop or your desktop system. I have even provided the code that we'll be using in this video series, so you can go and check out the codes from the community YouTube page. Having said that, let us now begin our C programming journey. The first point says that C is a high-level programming language, which means that using C we can write codes in the form that we as a human can understand, and the C programming language makes use of something known as a compiler. Now if you are wondering what a compiler is, it's basically a set of instruction, or we can call it a program, which converts our program that we wrote using set of instruction that we as a human can understand into an instruction that a machine, especially the CPU, can understand. This programming language was developed by Dennis Ritchie at Bell Laboratories in the year 1972. Whenever we write C program, we always save the source file with a .c extension. For example, suppose we are writing set of instruction using C as a programming language. Now what the third point says is that whenever you save a file, you save it using a name to the source file name with a .c extension. Now once we are done writing our source code and saving it with a .c extension, the next thing that we need to do is compile this program so that the CPU can understand it, and for which we use something called a compiler. Now in order to compile the source code, we make use of the GCC command followed by the name of your program. Once we are done with compilation of our C source file with the help of the GCC command, it returns a file which looks similar to this, and this is also known as an output file. And in order to execute or run the program, we just type this command from our shell prompt. Now if you are a Windows user, your shell may be a CMD. If you are a Linux user, it can be bash or a C shell, and then you just hit here enter button. Let us now see some of the features of C programming language. C language is suitable for writing our application software and system software. If you are wondering what application and system software are, we have already covered this in the software video. So if you are someone who doesn't know this, please check out the software video by the community. The second point says that C programs are efficient, fast and highly portable, and the reason to this is because it's very close to the operating system kernel. The source code for the Unix operating system, which is nothing but our system software, is also written using C programming language. The final point says that the C programming language is machine independent. Now what do you mean by that? It basically means that C programming language is hardware independent. So if we are using a computer system which has an Intel CPU or an AMD CPU, it just doesn't care, but it is platform dependent, or you can say operating system dependent. Now what do you mean by platform dependent? Suppose you are having a Windows operating system, and in that you write a program and save it by the file name abc.c, and then compile the source code using the gcc command. You get something known as the output file. Now if you take this output file and run it in another Windows system, it will run perfectly fine. But if you take this output file and run it in a non-Windows operating system like Linux or Unix, this file won't run. This is what we mean when we say platform dependent. Moving forward, let us now look at the structure of C program. Now every C program is composed of these 5 elements, though the last element, known as the comment, is considered as optional, but I recommend that you make use of comments as it increases your code readability. Let us now discuss the first element of a C program structure, and that is a header file section. Now what is a header file? It's basically a file that ends with a .h extension. And what this file consists of? This file consists of our function declaration and macro definitions. Now who writes this file? This file is generally written by the people who wrote the compiler, and it basically comes along with the compiler. You can even write this header file on your own. The second element is known as the main function. Well, this is where your execution of the code begins. The third element is something known as a declaration section. This is where we define variables and constant. Now if you have no idea what variable and constant are, it's perfectly fine. Later on in this video tutorial series, we'll get to know what variables and constants are. The fourth element is the executable part. This is where we write instruction as per our problem statement. And the last element is something known as comments, and it's optional. Now that we know what are all the elements that is needed to write a program, let us see them in action. This is a very simple program whose purpose is to greet the viewers with a message, hello, from the community. Let us now perform a line-by-line analysis of this set of instructions and what they actually mean. The first line is something we call it as a comment. And why do we use comment? To increase the code readability. In this case, I have written a message saying that this program is used to greet viewers. Now the question that comes to our mind is that how do we know that this is a comment? Well, we can know by looking at these 2 forward slash. Whenever there is a 2 forward slash followed by a message, it is basically a single line comment. If you are wondering why I referred to the first line as a single line comment, is because there are two types of comment. The single line comment, which begins with two forward slash followed by the message, and then we have something known as a multi-line comment. If you are wondering what a multiple line comment looks like, it looks somewhat like this. It begins with a forward slash followed by an asterisk mark. Then we have message that span across multiple lines, and after that it ends with an asterisk mark followed by another forward slash. And this comment is solely for the user or the coder. Whenever you compile your program, the compiler skips all this comment line. It means that this command won't get executed whenever you run your program. Let us now analyze the second line of code, and this is nothing but a header section. Now how do you know that it is a header file section? It's because you can see that this file ends with a .h extension. Now whenever you want to make use of this header file, you need to import it in your code. And how do you do it? With the help of preprocessor directive. And what is a preprocessor directive? It's basically a combination of these two symbols, hash followed by a include, and then we write the name of our header file that we want to use, in this case the stdio.h header file. And please pay careful attention to these two angular brackets, between which we insert the file that we are going to use in our program. Let us now analyze the third line of this code, and it is nothing but our main function. Well, the main function is where our execution of program begins. Having said that, let us now look at the component of this main function. The first thing that we see is the main. Well, this is nothing but our identifier, which is used to identify variable, constants, or a function. And then we have opening and closing round brackets. Then we have something known as the return type of a function. After that we have an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket, within which we write instruction for the problem to be solved. In this case, what is the problem? To greet the viewers. Now that we know what a comment is, what a header file section is, and what a main function is, let us now understand what this printf followed by the message means. Now what is this printf? Printf is actually a function whose codes is present in stdio.h header file, and that's the reason why we have included this in our program. And why is printf used for? Printf is used to print whatever message is passed to this function on your output screen. And then we have something as simple as a semicolon. Now this semicolon is used to inform our compiler that this statement has terminated, and the statement following this semicolon is a new statement. We make use of semicolon to inform the compiler that it is the end of one logical statement. In this case, the logical statement was to print hello from the community with the help of a printf function. Having said that, the return 0 statement is another logical statement, and this is used in order to return an integer to our main function, since the return type of our main function was an integer. That having said, let us now execute our program. Let us now analyze our result. In the first line, you can see there is a GCC command which actually is used in order to compile our source code. And then you have something known as a -o. Now, whenever you use the GCC command along with -o, it allows you to rename your output file, in this case as a main, and this is the name of your source code file. Now, once our code gets compiled, it's time to run. And in order to run our code, we make type the name of our output file. In this case, it is a main, and then we hit enter, and this is what you get as an output. And this was done with the help of our printf function. And the cool thing about printf function is that we don't have to write code where we pass a message and then make it appear on the screen. It is something that is already done by the people who designed this compiler, and they have just asked us to simply make use of this function whenever we need to output anything on the screen. In this code, we have comments, and then we have header file section, and then we have something known as a main function, and we have the executable part, but we do not have something known as the declaration section. The declaration section will be covered in the next video. Until that, goodbye.